So I'll just start with my thoughts and the topic of portfolio management, and then coming more towards Jira. And as said, if you have maybe specific questions on it, just ask in the chat. So what we want to look first is portfolio management. And here already the first topic comes up. What is a portfolio at all, and what is portfolio management? Maybe you are in the role of a project manager or a product manager or a product owner, then you often might have heard that term portfolio management already. And from our perspective, when we work with our clients together, there are tons of different portfolios what you can manage, right? I mean, there are portfolios in our field, what we are looking at are mainly, and that's maybe important to understand, three different ones. So from our perspective, you will always have these three different portfolios you're looking at. Either you have a project portfolio, what you want to manage, you have a product portfolio what to want to manage, or you some sort have a finance portfolio what you want to manage. And this obviously comes with different roles and also different needs behind in terms of tooling, in terms of setup, whatsoever it is. Our focus for today will be mainly in these two fields here, in project and product, because that finance part, especially when we're looking into Jira, is really hard to cover in there. Jira per se, and maybe you know a bit about Jira yourself, maybe using it. Jira is a tool from the company called Atlassian. Jira per se started for software development, and it's a software development tool to track issues and tasks, and developed into a big work suite, actually. So whenever you're coming into an enterprise, you're ending up some sort working with Jira, Confluence, and all these tools. However, it's not actually a finance management tool. So if you have a finance portfolio, whatever it is, if it's stocks, if it's your budget planning and so on, there are better tools around that. And I know it's often a challenge because also projects, right, and products, they somehow relate to finance, because we need to have budget for a project or budget for a product. So yes, they are interlinked, but just as a heads up, it's really hard to manage a good financial portfolio in Jira. If somebody of you had or has a solution for that, please let me know. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So we have a project, product, and finance portfolio. It's pretty clear. If you look into the first one, what is a project portfolio? A portfolio is generally an overview of all your projects in this case, right? So you have multiple projects listed somehow, shown in a roadmap, shown in some sort of overview, either across your department. So that could be one chance to say department view, could be a portfolio, or even as a smallest unit, maybe in the team, or then obviously across the organization or your company, organization or company. So there are different layers as well and levels where you can show your portfolio. And you can imagine now, and let me just sketch that here on the side, if you look at a company, right, and if we imagine it in a very classical structure where you say you have different layers in a company, the more it goes towards management and on top, the less granular it will be, your portfolio. Meaning here you might have way more details at the bottom, whereas the details at the top will be way less if you're going up, right? And that's fine, because at the end, what you want to know is, if you manage your portfolio, you don't want to go into the detail of the project and track each single task, but you want to understand the interrelations, the dependencies, and the whole connection of your either projects or products. So this is pretty similar. If you manage a project or product portfolio, you have a list, a conglomeration, either in your team, either in your department or organization, of your projects or products which need to be managed. And there's actually a dedicated role for this if you're a bigger enterprise or a bigger corporation. So let me just sketch that out. So probably on a team level, if you look into a product team as an example now, so if we go into a product team, which is building products, product team, you will have on a team level, you will have a product owner, which is responsible, or who's responsible, product owner, for a particular product. Okay, for example, if we think about a company developing maybe apps, that could be a specific app. Or if you're thinking in a more of an engineering part, hardware part, it could be a specific hardware component which is needed to build, or a hardware product itself. And then the next level, if you're going further and further up, you will have as a next higher level somebody called a product manager. You probably know that role yourself as well. That person is, and that's a complete different meetup, and we're not going to go into the details now, but that person is leaning towards the discovery side, understanding the user needs, the problems, so that the product owner can implement and build the product the best possible way. But, and that's important to understand, their focus is mainly on one to not too many products, right? Products. So we are not looking here at the whole portfolio of products. Whereas, and that's now the next role, the portfolio manager, either of a product or a project, focuses on all the products, all the projects within that specific organization or department, depending on what level that portfolio manager is. Normally, the portfolio manager is on an organizational level, because we're talking here about, bringing in everything together and visualizing it and understanding it, what drives business value and what doesn't. So the big question is now, why do we need to manage our portfolio at all? Well, if you look into the thing that if you have multiple projects which are running, and we had also one client, for example, where we did the whole project management standard and build up the whole project management standard, we initially looked into the setup and asked how many projects are running at all. And the client couldn't answer that, which is okay, because they were missing out the portfolio management role. So to be able to get transparency and to be able to understand what projects are running or what products are we building and which of these are driving value towards our goals of the company, whatever it is, we need to manage our portfolio. That means we need to list all our projects, we need to display them somehow, and we need to have some person in our role here, the portfolio manager, taking the responsibility to manage this portfolio, to raise awareness and track also the progress of whatever it is. So let me jump into that project portfolio as a first thing, and then I'll come to the product portfolio as a second thing. Mark, are there already any questions which I need to answer now, or?
No, everything okay.
Okay, all good.
I just shared the link in the chat again. If you want to have access to the recordings, please have a look to our YouTube channel, and there we will post all the recordings of the meetups.
All right, cool, perfect. Thanks, Mark. So in the project portfolio, and let's have a look into a single project. You will have a project which consists, and that's also linking it already towards Jira. I'll explain in a second. A project normally exists out of several things that need to be done. You could call them work packages or epics, whatever it is. So you need to get stuff done, work packages. And in each work package, you have multiple tasks which also need to be done, right? You have many of them that need to get done. And here you have another work package, VP, and so on. You get the idea, right? This is the view into the depth of one project, which is good. But now you have multiple of these projects next to each other. You have project 1, project 2, and further on. And this is now your portfolio. So you have 2 streams which need to be managed. You have one, this here in depth. That's where your project manager comes in. Your project manager, I just shortened it with PM. Don't confuse it with product manager, PM for project manager. And the other stream is your portfolio management, which goes across the projects. So portfolio management. And here, other things are important compared to the depth in a project. What is important here? So one thing, what you need to look at is, if you go into the portfolio management, what you will have a look on is capacity. Capacity in the sense of, can we start another project? Are we generally completely packed already? Or is there still, room to do something like that at all? Then the other thing, what you will look at is the value. And the value is always very hard to determine, right? But at the end, the value needs to be determined in some sort of money. I mean, you have business goals which you want to achieve, and your projects which are you doing need to contribute to your strategic direction, which at the end means your value of the project needs to be linked to your strategy. So you shouldn't start projects which don't contribute to the strategy. Sounds simple, isn't, unfortunately, because if we go into companies, we often see how many projects are running which are not contributing to the strategy, because either the strategy is missing or because there's no portfolio management. And then the other thing, what will be visible when you go into portfolio management, are dependencies. Dependencies between projects. Sometimes project A needs to stop before project B and whatsoever, right? There are things which are relating to each other, which need to be checked and managed. So this is the part in the portfolio management for a project. And you have now multiple projects. How does that look like now? And I'm coming to Jira in a second. So the simplest visualization of a project portfolio is a list of projects. However, that's semi-helpful, right? So you have two options. Option one is a portfolio board. You can set it up in Jira, you can put it on your wall, however you want, but obviously, as probably a lot of things are already in Jira or in the system, you want to have that also in Jira. So a portfolio board is nothing else than a Kanban board at the end in Jira, where you can say, you map your board and you, for example, say, you give it certain columns, right? And these columns can be defined. However, I like it very simple, to be honest. And we came up with a very simple thing. So you have, if we look at projects now, you have a column to do, then you have in progress, then you will have a new column, which you probably don't know yet. We call it almost done. I explain in a second, and then we have done. That's always a big discussion. You cannot call a status almost done, but that's a reality. We try to make it as realistic as possible. So if your portfolio board looks something like this, what will be on the portfolio board? Obviously, your projects. So one card, for example, or one post-it represents project one. And then you maybe have here another one, and you get the idea, right? So you have tons of your projects in here lying, projects 2, and so on. Now you can structure it with swim lanes in Jira, for example. You can introduce one swim lane here and say, for example, from department A, or you could structure it based on the size of the project. What you can do as well, you can make your swim lanes, if we say that just as a swim lane, as an example, you can make it either by department or by SML projects, so small, medium, large projects. And small means, for example, little budget, medium budget, large budget. That's a definition that needs to come up. And then obviously your project now walks from left to the right. So it just gets the flow through. And that's the central visualization from a portfolio perspective on the board level. We called that column here almost done because it's often very realistic. You have a project which is in progress, and before you can move it to done, there's still tiny things open, and it's just, you know, the reality that it moves from here, and then it often stays in here very, very long, and we don't like to have it super long in progress, because sometimes a lot of things are done. It's just the last 5% which are missing. Move it into almost done, and that's where then it comes in. And that now should be a very comprehensive overview of all your project in the defined scope, whether it's the department or your, for example, organization. So that means all project needs to come in here, which makes it very important that before the portfolio management, there's some sort of streamlined project request and project qualification. So before stuff comes in here, there needs to become some sort of a gate. What is now a project and what is it not? Because if you put now another project in here, it has impact on the capacity, it has impact on the timeline, it has impact on your value, what you're creating. So think about your project request. How does that look like, right? What are the qualification steps to get there, to be able to come from the left, a new idea, into this board at all. That's one visualization. The other visualization is then to bring this view on a timeline, which is the next thing. So your portfolio timeline, which is pretty simple as well. You just take now your calendar. So you have a list of projects, and you say project 1, project 2, and you can obviously give it more, details from priority, whatever you need here in columns. But the basic layout would be something like this, where you say on a timeline, and we really like quarters, especially when you go on project level. It's shouldn't be too granular in the portfolio. Quarter 3 and quarter 4. And then obviously you bring in here now your runtime. So for example, this project runs from here to here. And this one only starts here and continues all the way through. And I mean, you get it, right? And then you can even color them in Jira. And I explain you in a second how and what. And you say all blue ones are in progress. And for example, this one hasn't been started yet. That's why it's gray. So it's still to do, and so on. You get that idea. So you can display here your projects on a project level. And that's, in a nutshell, very simple visualization, but creates a lot of transparency, which is very important to manage your portfolio successfully.
Roman,
Yes,
quick question. Can you show us the board, the portfolio board again?
Sure.
Because maybe for the listeners today, when you have an organization that has maybe 150 or 200 projects, this is something we have figured out in the past. Some companies we work together, this is a normal amount of projects that are running in this companies. How are they doing to structure 150 to 200 projects here, and which informations are needed on which level about these projects? Can you explain us a bit maybe about that topic?
Yeah. So what they did is they choose their swim lanes. Let me maybe take a different color. As I said, based on the project size. Based on the project size. So what they did is they structured here based on small, based on medium projects and large project as a swim lane in Jira.
Mhm.
And on the card itself, they have something introduced which is called status. So the status of the project in the sense of a traffic light, which means green traffic light, all is good, all fine. Then another thing is they have an orange traffic light, which means be aware, something is not going in the right direction. And red is we have an emergency. That's the right wording. We need to act now. How does that work? The project managers are responsible to fill out every 4 weeks in a project and update the status based on, are we in budget? Are we in time? Are we delivering the scope? And if we're not, we must be aware, for example. So if we're running in the last 4 weeks, not in the budget, put it on orange, and then things are, on the radar. And for the management, it's pretty nice because what they just do on the board in Jira then, which is pretty simple for them. Nearly one. I wanted to move that. They have here on top just quick filters. So they can just filter here based on the status and say, for example, status is green. And then it shows quickly all red emergency projects on this board. If you have 200, for example, projects, it's quick and easy to filter out the problematic ones. And then you can even drill deeper and say, only show me large projects where the emergency is happening. And that's a quick and easy way to interact with that. And on the project card itself, so we call this every card on the board is a project card. They have the person still, so the project leader, in our case, PM for project manager. And then you can also filter based on who is the project manager of each individual project. And that's all done with onboard Jira and nothing fancy tooling and so on. I come to the tooling in a second where you can do even more.
Roman,
Mark.
Yes, I thank you for explaining that. And I was thinking about maybe also for the participants today, if you think about the headquarter and maybe the headquarter needs a different view than the facilities when they are maybe in Switzerland or in Brazil or in Turkey or in I don't know where the facilities are around the world. There's always some local CEO in charge for the facilities, and they see not the whole portfolio of the companies. No? Maybe you can explain a bit about that, how this is structured.
Yeah. So we have one client, they're spread around the world with many locations. And what they had, and maybe let me zoom down. That's probably a good idea. So we have a global portfolio board, which is the one I just showed you now. They all have the same structure at the end. And basically here are all projects inside. And that's in Jira for the C-level, right? For the global C-level. And then for each location, so for example, if we jump into one location, could be USA as an example, they have their subsidiary in the USA in Jira, their project portfolio relevant for the organization heads in USA. The same, for example, in maybe another country, Poland, and so on, right? And that's pretty nice because it's all linking up from the bottom. The project is coming and it's all granular from bottom to the top, then aggregated and shown easily on all levels and coming together on a project portfolio board. Mark, I think that was what you're looking at, right?
Yes, and the department leads are also on the facility under, and they have the overview about the project in their department. And this
Exactly.
is
You can even
important,
split
no?
it down then. That's, for example, and that specific client, you can split it down and say we have here department A, B, and C. So department A, and they have their portfolio board because only the projects which are relevant for their portfolio and so on, right? And that's
Cool.
how it's actually building up, right? And this same structure you can actually easily build up in Jira to just visualize that. And I want to show you quickly how you need to do that in Jira, because you need to do some things and there are some, prerequisites to ideally manage that without big fancy tooling. So if you are, let's jump into Jira setup for the Jira setup for project portfolio. So if you are looking into this one, we are 99.9% with our clients in the Jira cloud. So if you're in data center, it might be a bit different. But anyway, the big recommendation from our side is go towards cloud. That's a different topic. Maybe we can cover that in another session. So prerequisites. So we're looking at Jira cloud, and you need to be at least to do it in a proper way. You can do it with some fixes and workarounds, but to do it in a proper enterprise way on the premium plan. Because on the premium plan, you will get two features which are relevant for this. Feature one, which is coming, is that you can change the so-called hierarchy of issues. Important, it's not called issue anymore in Atlassian and Jira, just for you, just generally think they changed now the word. So an issue was something like a task or an epic. They changed it now to work item as a general term. So it's the called now work item hierarchy. And now I never know how to write it here. I think like that. What does that mean? A work item hierarchy normally in Jira is you have epic. Under an epic is either a story, user story, or a task, and underneath are subtasks. The thing what we want to achieve though is that on top of the epic, we want to introduce a new issue type, or how they call it now, a new work item, which is in our case because we want to build up a project portfolio called project. So you want to have this new issue type, which is called project, because on the board, you want to display projects cards, right? There is an app, an external app, and I'm going to come to that at the end quickly, where you don't need to set up a new issue type, but where you can use the actual Jira project for this as well instead of an issue type. It has both pros and cons. We like doing it this way. It works pretty well, and you don't need any other fancy tooling for that. So that's the one feature, what you need from the premium plan. And the other feature, what you will need to display on a timeline your portfolio then is called, sorry for the messy writing here, is called Jira plans, formerly known as advanced roadmaps. Advanced roadmaps. Roadmaps. What does that do? In advanced roadmaps, you can show and display your timeline as I mentioned it before. So basically what you're building up in Jira now is issue hierarchy structure. You have projects. The project is the parent of an epic. The parent of a story or task is an epic. So they always link to each other. And that's very important to understand. And let me sketch that again. You will have in Jira work items, Jira work items. You will have project as issue type or work item. In a project, you can have multiple epics. So epics, whatever you want, epic 1, epic 2, and so on. And in this epic, you can have multiple tasks, obviously, and then underneath subtasks. And this is very important because if you don't have this hierarchy, you cannot scale up and build the hierarchy towards your portfolio to show, because what you want to achieve is if you click here on one of the projects, on this card, for example, here, let's click on this one and the first one. You want that this issue item, this work item opens up called project. It has a description. It knows what the project team members are. It shows the size and it shows all linked epics, tasks, and so on underneath, because then you have a full hierarchy which you can display. You can also then, if you are in Jira and you're using plans, for example, click here in plans and open up and say, show me all epics underneath, and then you would see here the epics, for example, like this or like that. And here would be another one. You get the idea, right? And that's how you can do the so-called drill down for the people where it's necessary. Obviously, on a management level, you probably wouldn't do that. But the more you go into details, you want to know about that.
Roman,
Please.
just a quick question. Do you think it's important to have this drill down and look into the project in the perspective of a department leader when he's doing his resource planning or stuff like that?
Yes, we had one other client example where we built up the portfolio management on a department level. And the main pain point on a department level is resource management. What department heads need to manage is their resources, right? Their resources, their limited capacity, more projects are coming in, and somehow they need to juggle and manage this. So for a department head, it's very valuable to be able to see not the task level, but the epic level, to see how full is my actual month. I mean, you can imagine if you have now here in a department, let's assume 20 projects, and you now look into, for example, this month here, and you see, okay, look, this is very full. There are a lot of epics, and it's basically doing all the epics are only done by the same 2 people as an example. We are coming towards a capacity problem. Now a new project should start in the same quarter with a lot of new unknowns. Can we actually do this? And that's where it's very helpful from a department perspective to do that and to have a look into it.
Roman,
Also,
I would like,
sure,
can I add something?
please.
Also, it's really good when from the top of the company, new projects are floating in because they want to start something new. And you as a department leader has the necessity to explain that the resources are completely used in your department. You can't do any more new projects. And then it makes it really clear when you look to the epics in this quarter, what's going on there. And this is one point. And on the other point, on the C level, when you go up in the hierarchy, on the top of the big portfolio, project portfolio board, you can see how many in total projects are running, and is the company running smooth now? Because last year roughly you had 150 projects running, SML project in this side, in this amount and this amount, and you can have a feeling about the whole company, how many projects are possible to run through in a year. And this is something that it's really valuable to have this data if you are driving a company, because you can't push from above the projects into the departments, because they are just the engine stops running because they don't know what to do. They have capacity issues. They can't start new projects always. They need to finish old projects and then they can start new projects. Thank you.
Sure. Mark, are there any questions so far which I should cover here, or
No questions,
good?
Roman.
Okay.
All good.
Then before, and maybe I'd like still to mention product portfolio. We looked a lot into project portfolio now, but before I do that, staying in the Jira now, what is important if you want to run Jira plain without apps or whatever, you need, and that's important to keep in mind, Jira Cloud Premium plan. Then you can set up your hierarchy, item hierarchy based on project, epic, and so on. And you can use Jira plans to show your project and everything underneath on a timeline. And then what I would do is, as a third step, just make a dedicated Jira project, and don't confuse project now with project. That's a bit annoying because Jira calls, a Jira project. It's just basically a container where you can do stuff inside. So you will need to set up a Jira project and call it, for example, if it's your organization-wide portfolio management, you can call it your project portfolio management, for example, PM of organization X, Y, and Z, right? And in this project, you can build up the board we just showed you before, your board with the columns, and you just show in this project only the project issue type. So your work item, and in this project, and that's a bit more detailed now. If you have more questions, you just ask me. What is important here is you need to set the filter on the board to only display, only show your project work item. That not epics and stuff are shown and tasks and so on, but only the cards represent one project. And that's plain Jira, no apps, nothing needed, which is pretty cool to do and pretty simple, and it gives a lot of added value. However, if you want to take it more serious and go even further, you can obviously go into apps. And apps on Jira or Atlassian, that's a marketplace behind. You can buy them, depends on your size and your organization. But there are probably two apps which stand out, which need to be mentioned. Maybe you heard of one of them. One is called Big Picture. Big Picture is a massive suite, a massive tooling to do portfolio management, product or project, doesn't matter. Resource planning, capacity, even objectives and key results and whatever. It's complex. It's really complex. We built it up for one of our clients in there to do their product portfolio management, because they have a huge portfolio of products, and it needs to be managed and maintained very well. It's a third-party app coming on top. However, what you will still need is a premium plan in Jira to be able to set up the issue hierarchy as I showed you before. In Big Picture, you have many more features, and especially where Big Picture is very strong, where Jira with current board features is not yet there, is resource management and resource planning. So if you're looking into capacity planning, also planning of skills of people, etc. Resources in terms of time, it's really strong, really good, but also not easy to set up. It's quite tricky. It works very well from our experience, especially for large portfolios and large enterprises, because it's quite something to set up. Just let me mention one thing on that resource and capacity management. Jira Plans here, which comes with Premium, also has now a more comprehensive feature to manage resources based on either story points or hours of work for a specific work item. So there is the first start to go more into this direction, also with onboard features from Jira. And I think it's going to develop even more in this direction. And from my perspective, in 80%, it's even enough to use these onboard features here. So Big Picture is also very pricey, just to know that. So if you're looking here quickly at $30,000 plus for an app a year. But just keep that in mind that this tooling is there if it gets into complex portfolio management, dependencies, various views. This can be a very good tool.
Roman, there's
Yes,
a
please.
question in the chat from Adrian. I put it on page number 11 in the slide deck.
Okay.
And hopefully it has updated on your side.
Yes.
Do you like to read it out?
Yes. Since when has the project work item been made available? It is applicable to non-cloud Jira versions. So it's not available in that sense, Arian. It's an item which you can set up yourself. So work item, issue type, work item. It's confusing. Let's stick to work item. You need to set it up yourself. And to be able to do that, you need the Jira Premium Cloud plan, because then you can build your own issue hierarchy and say, I need a project work item. And then it's possible. I'm not 100% sure if it's applicable to non-cloud Jira version. I must double check. I just can't tell you currently if it's possible in the data center or not.
There came another question in from Nasser.
How can I track capacity for portfolio projects in plain Jira version? So in plain Jira, you will need Jira plans. In plain Jira, you will need Jira plans. Otherwise, you cannot track capacity how you think now. So with Jira plans, and maybe let's quickly jump into this one quickly here. Capacity. Oh, come on, Roman. Too much writing.
Do you like to share the iPad again, Roman?
Oh yeah, sorry. Thanks for.
Thank you.
Capacity. So in Jira. So you can manage capacity using Jira plans. That's available in the premium plan as said. And here you have basically two options how to manage your capacity. Capacity is either determined by using story points, or estimated effort. Why are you laughing, Mark?
I know you are happy when you go jumping into the river today in München.
It's warm. It's warm.
Yeah, it's quite warm here.
It's
in Germany.
very hot here. An estimated effort in hours. So what does that mean? Back to your question. To be able to manage your capacity, you first need to make it visible in the sense of estimations of your efforts. And how do you estimate? Either in story points or with actual hours. So every task, what you're going to plan up front, needs to have some sort of estimated effort assigned, either in story points or hours. There is a field for that, the story point field in Jira, or the estimated effort for our, hourly rate. How much hours do I need to fulfill task A, B, and C? And what then happens? So you estimate your tasks. And then in Jira plans, you can visualize your capacity over a timeline and see how full are we or how not full are we. How does it work? In Jira plans, you will need to assign to a team member or to your team the weekly hour what they have. So for example, if team member A, let's call them Peter, Paul, and Andrea, for example, if that would be your team, you assign in Jira plans, Peter is working only 10 hours per week because he's already retired, and Paul and Andrea are working 40 hours per week. And that's your capacity, which is potentially available at 100% of the team. And now you look into, okay, what are my estimated tasks here, right, over a certain period of time? So for example, you would have for 1 week, 60 hours estimated, and the other week you only have 20 hours estimated. And this is shown then in Jira in form of green and blue, whether you're over capacity under capacity or within the capacity. It's not a super sophisticated capacity management, but it's definitely a possibility and indication. In big picture, you have way more option with that, but it's also way more complicated. And the question is always, how valuable is it to do it this granular? Because it's quite some effort to also estimate and plan it up front. The other way around, what you could do also in Jira, what we did in a very simplified way, which is not really capacity management, but portfolio management, capacity management light. You can set up in Jira very simple on board a Jira dashboard, board, and then filter over, for example, your project managers and show it in a table where you have your people. Let's stick to the names again. Peter, I think the other guy was called Paul, if I'm correct, and Andrea. And what you could do now, if you have your portfolio board in a very simple way, you could say, we have small projects, medium projects, and large projects. And now you just show a count, and that can be done easily if you have the portfolio board set up. How many projects does Paul have, or Peter? Let's start with Peter. Small ones. He has 0 small ones. He has 1 medium one as a project manager, for example, and 0 large ones. And yes, that's a very simplified way on showing that. But you quickly see, for example, that Paul now here in this row would have 7 in total projects where he is the project manager, which gives me an indication. It's not a capacity management, but gives me an indication on whether that person is busy in terms of managing projects and is capable of handling another one on top or not. If you want to look into capacity management with Jira on board, you will need Jira Premium. You can use Jira Plans and then jump into doing it as sketched out here.
Roman, there is a question from Tanvi. Would you also be showing us the Jira plan, he asked.
Probably not today because I didn't set it up, but I could. Yes, maybe in the next meetup, we can definitely do this. Yes, definitely. I didn't prepare it currently. No.
Yeah, there's a thumbs up from Tanvi. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Any other question?
Nothing in the chat right now. Feel free to ask the questions in the chat. We are answering them here.
Yep.
If you'd like to have the notes and everything of this recording here, what Roman is explaining to us, feel free to look to our YouTube channel. There you can have access to the recording of this meetup afterwards, and you can look through the recordings with all the notes Roman has done here on the iPad. I share the link again from the YouTube channel in the chat soon.
And another app, which I wanted to mention before, where we then got stuck is, and maybe let's scroll up to the apps next to big picture. We have something which is called Project Track app. So for Jira, Project Track is way more lightweight than big picture, and it has a bit of it has a complete different starting point. Why? So far, we set up a specific work item in Jira, you remember, called project. The cool thing with Project Track is that you don't set up a specific work item in there. What Project Track does, and I'm just going quickly down here to have a bit more space now. In Jira, and let's imagine, sorry, sketching today. In Jira, we have, right, if this is our browser here now, we have the list of Jira projects, right? Jira projects. And if you work consistent in your Jira project setup, and each of your actual projects or products is also one dedicated single Jira project, then you can use the app Project Track. Why? Because you have here now project 1, project 2, project 3, right? And then maybe we give them some names as examples. So let me think about something. Build new office as an example for one project. And et cetera, it doesn't matter for now. And each of these are now single Jira projects. And that's important to understand, because what the app does now is it takes this single Jira project and brings it into a portfolio board, as I showed you before, and a portfolio timeline. And that's pretty cool because you don't need to set up some hierarchy and so on. You don't need Jira Premium. You can do it even on a Jira free plan, which is really cool if you're a small team. And it's actually a really good MVP solution to start managing your projects. You can even assign custom fields with, if you have a specific budget and so on. So from this on, what happens basically is in the app, and you will always then work in the app if you look into your portfolio, you will have your portfolio board again, portfolio board, and also be your timeline, as I showed you before. And the app does the following thing. It makes it possible to add to a Jira project a start and an end date, which is currently not natively possible in Jira, which means each of these Jira projects here gets a start date, and end date. And that makes it possible, so you can assign that date, obviously, to show it on a timeline, which is pretty cool because you have now on your board your projects, not too many details. You see your whole portfolio, but the important thing is now that you really must get every new project and set up for a specific new project, a specific Jira project. So you cannot do, for example, one big Jira project where you put all your stuff in. You need to separate them and to display it. And then this app, which is called Project Track, I just write that on top here again, that we have that here, app for Jira, app Project Track is pretty cool. And it's a pretty good starting point if you want to get started with managing your overall portfolio in Jira. Right. Mark, any further things from your side?
Yes, two guys. Nasser also has mentioned if we can have another session for showing more features as demo or live, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, sure. Then we do a live Jira's going around in Jira session. Absolutely.
Roman liked that a lot, and we did it in the past quite often.
Yeah, we did.
And yes.
Yeah, no, we can do that. Sure.
Adrian is leaving. He's already out. Thank you for the
Thanks.
nice words in the chat. Thank you. He enjoyed it a lot. And he's also looking for the potential follow-up and demo. Cool. Thank you, Adrian, for joining today.
Cool.
Tanvi has a question. Are these paid apps, Big Picture and Project Track?
Project Track is a paid app, so it's free up to 10 users. And above, I think 100 users cost $5,000 a year, something like this. And Big Picture is paid. I'm not even sure if it's free for 10 users. You must check that. You can easily have a look into the marketplace, but everything above 10 users for sure paid, but below 10 users for free. So my recommendation is if you want to have a test setup, just set up a free Jira instance, go on Jira and set one up to play around, install the app, and then you quickly can play around with it. That's pretty easy.
Roman, it's already 5 minutes before
yes, exactly.
finish.
So what I would do now is I would close for today, and I hope you enjoyed with the sketching and input and live Q&A that it was valuable for you. I got the hint that a demo will be nice. We'll incorporate it in our meetup, Mark. Besides that, thanks for joining. I have 2 more things. Just to mention it again, YouTube, check it out. You can find all the stuff there. And the other thing is, and that's just a teaser, as you know, we have an office in South Africa, and I don't know where you're currently sitting, but we have also people joining us from Cape Town in South Africa. And we have another cooperation partner in South Africa. They're called Saxa, and it's the Scrum user group of South Africa. They also have a meetup running there. We did already talks for them. And what we decided is that we come up with an actual joint meetup, a big event, in-person event, also hybrid for people who can't be in Cape Town in South Africa, coming up in October. So still a bit of time, and we're going to keep repeating that in the meetup just to let you know, but this is the first time we're sharing it. And we're going to talk about digital transformation in the exponential age of AI. It's going to be a pretty cool meetup, up to 80 people on a rooftop location in Cape Town. We'll have lightning talks. We'll have an expert panel discussion. It's in collaboration with our partner, Suxa there in Cape Town together. And we're looking forward to run this event. Live streaming, so remote, can also be participated. Maybe already save the date. Details to come more in the next meetups. Mark, I think that's it for today, right?
Yeah, that's cool, Rom. Thank you very much. Where are you going next? Next country? Next stop for you?
I'm going to Johannesburg in literally 2 weeks on a big conference where I'm invited as a keynote speaker. I'm going to speak there. 15,000 people visiting this show, so I'm really curious what's happening.
Cool.
I still need to prepare the presentation, but I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, thanks everybody
Thank
for
you very
joining
much.
today. And
Cool,
if you
Rom.
want or need anything, feel free to reach out to us as always.